Welcome to this special episode of Talk Commerce
Tech Edition.
Welcome to this Tech Edition episode of Talk Commerce, where we explore how merchants, agencies, and developers experience commerce and the communities they live in. This week we interview Christian Munch, Head of Development for N98 in Germany. We talk a little about the history of Magerun, the Swiss Army knife of Magento. Brent tells us how it saved him so much time. We talk about Magento and headless commerce, and Christian helps us understand some alternatives to just going headless with a single app. We talk about other apps and how they connect with Magento. This is an exciting episode and a must listen to. Don't miss it. The Talk Commerce podcast is sponsored by SwiftOtter. E-commerce developers solve problems daily. In fact, some of those seem like mountainous hurdles that must be climbed in a matter of hours. Stress levels can go through the roof. No wonder the plague of burnout affects developers too. But there's a vaccine for that. Investing time in your career will take you farther than you ever imagined. Meet SwiftOtter. SwiftOtter exists to help you become the e-commerce hero that is indispensable and irreplaceable at your company. We do this through Magento certification study materials and Joseph Maxwell's most recent book, The Art of E-commerce Debugging. Go to swiftotter.com to learn more about how you can quickly climb the ranks in your quest to be a better developer. While you're there, use the coupon code TALKCommerce for 15% off any digital goods at swiftotter.com. Talk Commerce is brought to you by eWay Corp. Cloud is a new normal for companies of any size. Buying, maintaining, upgrading, and disposing of machines is expensive and complicated. Amazon Web Services, managed by eWay Corp, offers an easy-to-use, flexible, cost-effective solution to all your infrastructure needs. eWay Corp can provide a secure, reliable, scalable, high-performance network that will make your office hum. Not literally. eWay Corp has saved its customers an average of 31% on their IT costs while adding 62% to the bottom line efficiency. To top that, their customers have seen 43% fewer security incidents. Go to ewaycorp.com to learn how you can start saving money and headaches by moving to the cloud. That's ewaycorp.com. My name is Brent Peterson, and I'm your host. Please remember to subscribe wherever you download your podcasts. And now, Talk Commerce. Welcome to this special tech edition of Talk Commerce. Today I have Christian Munch. Munch. He'll correct my pronunciation in a minute here. Coming from Germany today. Christian, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself? Tell us what you do and maybe one of your passions.
Yeah, maybe you know me because I'm the developer of one famous tool. It's called N98 Magerun. So most people know the tool. Maybe they know me. But my professional job is I'm the head of development of a German Magento agency. So we are 100% focused on Magento. So my daily business is everything about Magento and Adobe. And I have also a family, and I love my family, and I'm very interested in other stuff, so like football or soccer or Linux.
Good, yeah. So I know that the most famous thing that you've developed in the past was the Magerun tool, and we won't go into a lot of detail on that, but basically it's the Swiss Army knife for Magento, and I used it for years and years, and then it came out as Magerun 2 for Magento 2, and extended all kinds of tools for developers to do everything you could possibly imagine for Magento from the command line. So tell us a little bit about why you decided to do that and what was your inspiration for doing that?
Yeah, I got this question several times, and it's interesting to know there was never an intention to build a tool like Magerun. So at one day after a long, hard work day, I had the idea to discover the Symfony components and so PHP components. And if you develop, you always see this hello world examples in the documentation. And I think hello world is not what I want. So it's better to have a real goal you want to reach. And so I had the idea to use the Symfony components and to try to connect an existing Magento 1 project, because Magento 1 had no good CLI tool at this moment. And so I tried it, and gratefully it was really simple to bootstrap Magento in Magento 1. So you had to require only one file in your PHP code and call Mage app, and then you are good to go to work with Magento 1. So it was really easy. And so I started to work on the command, and I decided to create a command which generates a local .xml file, because I had to do that several times. And so I had a PHP tool with one command, and on the next day I showed that to a colleague, and he said to me, "Wow, that's cool. Can we add additional commands?" And that was the start of the tool, but it was not planned.
Yeah, so you're literally correct when you say the Swiss Army knife of Magento. I'm sure the Swiss Army knife started with just the blade, and then somebody said we want a scissors, and somebody said we want a comb, and somebody said we need a bottle opener, and it's a fantastic tool. So you have been very active in the Magento community since the beginning of Magento. How have you seen Magento change over the years, especially in Germany since you first started developing on it?
Mm. Yeah, that's a complex question. So I think in Germany, we have a good tradition in with Magento. I think the Meet Magento conference series started in Germany, and there's an old community of Magento guys in Germany. A lot of them still stick to Magento 1. They love Magento 1, but it's different today. But as I started to work with Magento was not released. So it was a 0.8 version, beta version. And at this time, there was not such a diversity of kind of systems. So you had less systems, no freedom of choice. A lot of systems were closed source, and other systems were not so feature rich. And then Magento entered the market with an open source software. It was based on Zen framework, which was also very popular at this time. And in our company, we used Zen framework components to create custom development stuff. And so we started with Magento. It was also my entry point to the Magento community. So yeah.
I think I remember seeing something when Magento 2 came out, and then the B2B version came out. You were part of a roadshow. I was very interested in seeing your experience on that Magento B2B version that was introduced, and how you interacted, or how the clients liked the product when that part of it came out. Because I do feel like Magento or Adobe Commerce, the strongest part of their system still is now their B2B component.
Yeah, I think it started a bit earlier. So we were part of the beta process of Magento 2. So, for example, I was one of the developers who created the first Magento Enterprise shop in Europe. And that was also a hard time, because if you develop with a beta version or maybe an alpha version, and you have some issues in your shop, then you have to figure out, is it a problem of a missing feature? Is it a problem of the core? Is it a problem that you don't understand how you have to code something? And you have to upgrade several times during this development process in a very unstable way. So this was really a hard experience. But the advantage for me was I was really early involved in Magento 2. By the way, I used Magerun 2 to learn Magento 2. So I ported the commands from Magento 1 to 2. So I had to figure out how is that solved in Magento 2. And it's similar to the B2B component, which was released later on. So I was involved in a project where we used the B2B components before they was released. Also a very unstable way.
Yeah, I think any merchant or anybody would hesitate to use anything in alpha or even beta version in production. But I think sometimes we're forced to do that. We're forced to not forced, but the carrot is out there where we'd like to use some of those features, and we'd like to use them sooner than later.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, so I know that now the buzzword around Magento or Adobe Commerce is headless, and I think that's where we're all excited to see and where it's going. Why don't you tell us a little bit about some of your experiences around headless and using Adobe Commerce and headless?
Yeah, that's also a wide topic, headless, and I think. If we look on the market, so we see several solutions. So, for example, View Storefront, PWA Studio, and there are also other solutions, but they all are single-page applications, headless single-page applications. And what I miss is a multi-page application headless. It's a missing piece in the market, and currently, I developed with some of my colleagues, a prototype of a multi-page application specialized for B2B, because
so maybe
it's missing in the market.
Yeah, maybe we could give a little bit of background to if there's any merchants listening, what the difference would be from a single-page application to a multi-page application. Could we just maybe explain that a little bit for people who may not understand it?
Yeah, single page application means that you have one entry point. You load your website in the browser, and you have one page, and the page contains the whole application. It's loaded in several requests, but you have only one page, and inside this single page, you navigate. And after you have loaded the single page, you can communicate, for example, with APIs, and you have only a delta of data which is transferred to the server and back.
So the example would be a PWA Studio would be a single page application that's right now being sponsored by Adobe Commerce.
Right. Sometimes, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, sometimes there's a bit confusion about the terms. So single page app and headless and PWA, but it's different. So you can also have a multi-page app which contains PWA features, and it's a group of techniques. So PWA and single page app. PWA Studio is one example for a single page app which is it's a headless solution for Magento, one single page app and PWA, and View Storefront the same. And
And somebody could theoretically build out a multi-page app on Drupal with connecting Magento as the backend data components. Is that correct?
that's correct. So a multi-page application is what we had in the past. So a standard PHP application is mostly a multi-page application, and you can create multi-page application in the technology you want. And what's missing for me is that there's no special multi-page application dedicated for Magento.
Yeah, and I think the advantage of that, and I've thought about this as well, would be something like maybe a bulk of your marketing material would be in your single page application, and then you could disperse that into a multi-page application for other features, including the card, and that doesn't restrict you then to some of those specific things that are around PWA Studio and your cart or your payment or your checkout or whatever.
Yeah, right. So I see some technical problems in the current single page application solutions. So for example, I see that front-end components are loading their own data, and that leads into the situation that you have a lot of requests to your Magento backend system. And I think it's not the right way that that the front-end components manage where the data comes from. And I see that in several solutions where I digged into the code. It's one big issue for me, and one thing is that it's not 100% optimized for search engines. So search engines have to pass to load the application, and you have big issues in the way they generate server-side content. It's hard for developers to develop that in a way that it runs perfect for the search engine. It's possible to deal with that issue, but it's complex for developers. It's also what I see, that a lot of Magento developers have problems to use these new techniques, PWA Studio and Vue Storefront.
Yeah, and we hope because Progressive Web App is a Google sort of program or Google sort of way of doing things, that Google has also thought about the search engine and how it's doing. But I think you're right that it does come down to how the developers are doing it to make sure that it's done correctly. And I think one of the issues, not right now at this time, is that there's not a lot of documentation or education around how developers should do that, or there isn't a central point in which developers would do it this way and then becomes common across all development items for that single page application.
And what's your experience with the existing Magento developers? My experience is that some of them are very interested to learn, for example, Node.js and to develop in React components, but there are a lot of guys who are very backend related, and they don't want to use this modern front-end stack.
Yeah, it's been my experience that your typical long-term Magento front-end developer may or may not be interested in learning React and how to do it in PWA Studio. And I think from an agency standpoint, it might be that the agency sort of has to say, here's where we're going and you need to get on board with this.
Mm-hmm.
Or there has to be a developer who's super interested and they're going to take it in on their own to learn it. But I think, I've been doing a lot of interviews on this topic specifically around React or the PWA version versus a traditional version. And it is a different developer type. And sometimes it may just mean that you want to get a React developer. And I think Jissa Rietsma has said many times that those people who already know React are very comfortable in doing that, even if it's on Magento or I mean PWA, View Storefront, or whatever the stack is. They're comfortable in doing that. So it's really down to the team you're working with, and then of course to the individual developer and how they want to learn and grow in their own personal best practice.
Yeah, that's
So
also my
yeah, go
that's
ahead.
also what I see in our agency, that we have more front developers now than in the past. The way of creating apps or shops is changing, and we have much more architectures in the wild. In the past, we had a simple Magento shop, and now we have headless, non-headless. We have View Storefront, we have PWA Studio, we have complex infrastructure with Kubernetes clusters, and it's more and more and more and more complex. And that's why I thought, stop. There must be a simpler solution for example, for a B2B portal, and why not use PHP to create the frontend application, and then you can use React on Vue components on top of the multi-page application. That solves my issue that I have to have less developers. I can reuse them for the front-end application.
And are you working on a prototype of this right now?
Yeah, it's more than a prototype, so it's currently possible to log in, to log out, and whole process communication is done with REST APIs and GraphQL. But we try to use Elasticsearch wherever possible to fetch the data, so like in View Storefront. But the big difference is that the front-end application contains no logic, there's no database involved, but there's a session management front-end application, which helps that we don't have to talk all the time with the Magento backend. And improvement, for example, the mini card at the top is cached in the front application. But in general, we talk only with Elasticsearch and fetch the data from Elasticsearch. But the process stuff is done in Magento. So we use all the APIs, and in the prototype, we have covered all API scopes. So you can use the REST API in admin scope, customer scope, anonymous scope, also the REST GraphQL APIs. And the good thing is, if Adobe creates new APIs for PWA Studio, I can also use them in my application.
Oh, good. So then, on your new prototype, how is the front end going to work for a developer? Is it you could use a traditional model, you could use a custom model, or is it going to be some kind of a React or Java based model?
The idea is that we don't reinvent the wheel. So we use a very small, thin Symfony application in the front end, and we use most of the stuff which is included in Symfony. So the templates are Twig templates with some functions added, especially to create search engine friendly URLs or to format prices. But it's very common and standard. And on top, we decided to use Vue components, but only on some positions of the system where we need that. But the difference is it's not the if I look in PWS Studio or View Storefront, the whole application is generated in this Vue components. In our case, only a part of the system depends on that. And the front-end developers can choose the front-end stack they want.
So I kind of going on the topic of headless and complexity. One thing I'm trying to help merchants understand is that the simple fact that they're going to split between two. So we have a Magento backend, and then we're going to have a headless. It doesn't necessarily have to be thought about from their standpoint as more complicated, since we are deploying something anyways. My thought on this is that if you deploy Magento separately from your front end, that it's just another deployment that you have to do, and it could make your job easier because you don't have to QA and check so many things if you're deploying a whole nother Magento version again and again and again. What is your view on the complexity and making at least merchants feel good about this complexity doesn't offer a lot of complexity for them?
Yeah, the first thing is I don't think that headless is a solution for every shop. So if you have a really standard shop with a cart and a standard checkout and some products, then why use a headless infrastructure if it's enough in a standard shop, because it's fast enough, and yeah, it's good to go with a standard shop. Then maybe Hyva is also a solution for that if you need a fast front end. In my case, I choose this headless solution if I have requirements which are bring me to the position that I have to change so much stuff in the Magento system, so that I have to rewrite a lot of modules. Then it's hard to modify the Magento, the way Magento handles, for example, prices or also checkout works. Then a header solution could be a good fit for you. In our case, we have to deal a lot with SAP systems, and if you have an SAP system in place, then it's very common that you transfer the whole card to the ERP system. The ERP system calculates prices and replaces items in the cart, and you get the whole cart back. And so it's so different to the standard checkout that that Magento is blocking me here, and I have to rewrite the whole checkout for that. Then I'm faster if I implement my own checkout from scratch in a headless solution.
Yeah, and I think you brought up a really important point that headless is not for everybody, and it doesn't necessarily have to be for everybody. No, you did bring up Haifa, however you want to say it. And I'm excited about that particular theme because I think a lot of us have been put into some complacency about how fast Magento is, and some of the competition has said, well, Magento you can't get your Magento 2 store to load any faster than 2 or 3 seconds or 4 seconds for Luma or whatever it is. So I'm refreshed by the fact that we're seeing faster stores now. Can you comment a little?
By the way, I'm really inspired by the Hyva team, because a lot of people are arguing with the way Magento do something, like the front end stuff with required JS and so on. But I like people who change stuff or try out stuff and don't think Adobe should solve that all the time, because it's hard for Adobe to change stuff. They have to be provide a system which is backwards compatible in several ways, so they cannot change from one to another day how the system works. But third-party solutions can do that. They don't have to respect backwards compatibility here. So I like the way the Hyva guys created a solution which resolves a lot of pain points.
Yeah, and I think that we've seen the innovation that's come out of the Magento and now Adobe community come from this exact type of thing, where it's been identified that something isn't good or isn't even great, and hey, let's make something better. Just like you were talking about, it's the checkout process may not work for you, Magento offers you the ability to reinvent it and make it new for whatever you need. And if that works for the broader market, that's even better. And we've seen, Magento adopt specific things even in their core code later down the line for all of those needs. So I'm equally excited and impressed with what the Hoofa team has done in such a short amount of time. Can you? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, and they also inspired me to think about this missing piece in the market, and so I decided to try out a solution with a multi-page application. And after some hours of writing code, I had a first working mini prototype, and I was so fast in the development speed that I showed that colleagues, and they are also inspired to create a better solution. And but the initial process started with the Hoover guys who inspired me.
And is your solution, is it going to be available for us to try in an open source format?
Yeah, it's one topic I have to discuss with our CEO. So
okay, so maybe soon in the future we'll see it. Good.
But I will talk about that in the webinar, at least that.
Excellent. Yeah, if there's any show notes we can share later, that would be fantastic. So a little, I think you've been part of a lot of the unconferences around Magento, and part of what Magento has what's made Magento so unique is the vibrant community that we have. How do you feel the state of our current Magento community is and where it's going?
Yeah, I'm a bit. Yeah, it's. I see I'm a little bit pessimistic. So I see Adobe is bringing in more and more. How can I explain it? It's more enterprise focus in their world, and Magento is really huge in the long tail of shops. So a lot of agencies, also smaller agencies, freelancers who work with Magento, and they started with Magento 1 and they were successful. They created a really bunch of shops, so a lot of shops. So Magento was a market leader here. But it's because there are a lot of open source editions in the market, and I'm personally in a bubble because at work we nearly use to 90% commerce edition, but I also see the other agencies and the other solutions, and I think the way Adobe pushes the community is more in the enterprise segment. And especially in Germany, I see a lot of developers working now with Shopware instead of Magento, because it's hard for a single developer to create a complex Magento 2 shop.
Yeah. How about where Magento is going, or let's just say Adobe Commerce? Do you think the Magento 3 will be Adobe Commerce 3 SaaS version at some point in the future?
Oh, I'm not sure if they will call the product Magento 3, because it sounds bad for marketing. There's a lot of issues in the switch from 1 to 2. But I see that they change the way the system works, and I see some kind of microservice architecture there. And maybe we can call that Magento 3 because it's so different to the current solution.
Yeah, it is rapidly changing, certainly. Um, all right, well, we have about 10 minutes left. Can you tell us what's interesting you right now for reading materials, maybe podcasts? What do you have that would be interesting for others?
Yeah, podcasts. I hear a lot of podcasts, mainly in the car when I drive in the car, and I have some German podcasts. I'm not sure if they're interesting for other people, but one podcast I want to mention because it's so unknown. It's the podcast is called Request for Comments, and the idea is that they discuss RFCs. That sounds very boring, but it's not boring because they explain everything in very detailed way. So, for example, you have an 8-hour talk about encryption and certifications, and
And you said RFP
RFC.
or RFC? Sorry, okay. And what is RFC? Can you just explain?
Request for comment.
Oh, right. Oh, yeah. I'm sorry. Okay.
It's about internet standards.
Yeah, got it. Okay.
The idea is that they choose one RFC and then they explain everything in the RFC for several hours.
Okay.
And
So
you can choose if you are interested to know what's inside this RFC, but not every RFC is interesting. So, but especially the RFCs about encryption and how certificates in work. I learned a lot of stuff there.
Okay, good. And if you were to be able to say to a merchant something that they should be looking for now in the near future, what kind of advice would you give them?
To a merchant?
Yes. Like, what's the one thing that they should and could be looking at right now, maybe around Adobe Commerce?
Oh, that's a really hard question for me because I'm not a guy who sells features, but I think merchants should be open for new technologies, and they should not try to save too much money on the wrong end. And I see a lot of merchants who are not are not thinking about the costs of an e-commerce solution. You know? So you need several kind of budgets in a shop, and some merchants invest most of the money in feature development because you can see the features, but no one knows that the shop exists. So you need all the marketing budget and a maintenance budget. And so my advice is that don't save the money on the wrong side.
Yeah, and you're not the first person to say, to give that sort of answer where the merchants have to have a broader view on what their entire solution is doing. Don't just focus on one thing and one specific feature or one technology, and keep your mind open to what is out there. And I think that our landscape is going to continue to change even faster for all these new features that are coming out. And merchants have to keep their eyes open on what's new out there.
Yeah, and we need to try out things, and we should also accept that some of the stuff we create fails. Then we remove this. We should remove that, and it's not a good idea to invest all of the money only in a rich feature set, and no one knows that the shop exists, and maybe the customers don't want these features, but we create these features because we like these features. So it's we have to respect our own customers here.
Yeah.
And we should talk with them. So maybe it's a good idea to invest some kind of part of the money to talk with the customers.
Yeah, very good point. And if you were to have a chance to give a shameless plug about anything, what would you plug right now?
Oh, that's a wrong question for me. I'm not a selling guy. So I would like to inspire other developers to talk on conferences or to bring in content to local meetups. So I would like advertise to visit meetups if it's possible after COVID, or maybe invest some time to tell people what you are doing. And some people think it's not important what I do. No one is interested, but it's not true. So if you are creating anything, tell the people about that. There are always nice guys in the community which discuss that with you, and they like that. So
Yeah, and one of the best unconference is always the one that happens in Germany. And I had the pleasure of going to it in 2019, the Magerun conference in Cologne. And we probably won't have it this year, but I'm certain that 2022 will have an unconference in Cologne. And that's a great opportunity for developers to just do whatever they need, and people vote on that topic that's going to come out. My shameless plug is that I'm promoting an unconference and hackathon in Orlando, Florida in 2022. That would be around this same idea where developers would have a chance to speak about a topic, and we would also maybe have a chance to do some work on Adobe Commerce with a whole group of people. And of course, Disney World is there. So that is also, it's not as good as a Cologne, Germany, but certainly Disney World for some people is a big draw. So I don't understand why there's never been a Magento conference or anything that's happened in Orlando, but I'm pushing for 2022 January, Orlando, Florida.
oh, great! I hope I can join.
Yes,
I was never
absolutely.
in Florida.
Well, January is a great time to go because it's warm. And in Minnesota, it's like minus 20 Celsius.
Okay, I think you have nearly the same temperature in Minnesota than in Germany at this time.
Yes,
But
exactly.
it's not minus 20 in Germany, but
It's cold. Christian, I thank you so much for taking this time, and this has been a great conversation. And again, thank you so much for doing Magerun. It has been such a help to so many developers for all these years. And I know there's so many different aspects about it that maybe a super techie talk that we could go into, that if somebody's very interested in it, but they can certainly find it on GitHub, and we'll put as many of the show notes as we can onto that so they could look up Magerun. But I know that you're always at the forefront of your development thoughts and thinking, and I really appreciate this time.
yeah, thank you very much. It was an honor for me to speak here, and I always appreciate it to talk with you.
Yes, Dankeschön.
Gerne.
Have a good night. Ciao. Tschüss.
Ciao. Tschüss.
The Talk Commerce podcast is sponsored by SwiftOtter. E-commerce developers solve problems daily. In fact, some of those seem like mountainous hurdles that must be climbed in a matter of hours. Stress levels can go through the roof. No wonder the plague of burnout affects developers too. But there's a vaccine for that. Investing time in your career will take you farther than you ever imagined. Meet SwiftOtter. SwiftOtter exists to help you become the e-commerce hero that is indispensable and irreplaceable at your company. We do this through Magento certification study materials and Joseph Maxwell's most recent book, the art of e-commerce debugging. Go to swiftotter.com to learn more about how you can quickly climb the ranks in your quest to be a better developer. While you're there, use the coupon code TalkCommerce for 15% off any digital goods at swiftotter.com. Talk Commerce is brought to you by eWay Corp. Cloud is the new normal for companies of any size. Buying, maintaining, upgrading, and disposing of machines is expensive and complicated. Amazon Web Services, managed by eWay Corp, offers an easy-to-use, flexible, cost-effective solution to all your infrastructure needs. eWay Corp can provide a secure, reliable, scalable, high-performance network that will make your office hum, not literally. eWay Corp has saved its customers an average of 31% on their IT costs while adding 62% to the bottom line efficiency. To top that, their customers have seen 43% fewer security incidents. Go to ewaycorp.com to learn how you can start saving money and headaches by moving to the cloud. That's ewaycorp.com. Thank you again for listening. My name is Brent Peterson, and it has been my pleasure to be your host today. Please rate and subscribe to Talk Commerce. New shows out every week.